You're listening to the Magnetic Boss Podcast. I'm your host, Calandra Martin, intuitive brand designer for spiritual entrepreneurs. The Magnetic Boss Podcast is where visionaries come together to openly share wisdom and authentic conversations. I know that you are ready to leave your legacy in the world and become sought out in your industry. I also know that you are sick and tired of getting overlooked. You're ready to have a magnetic business. I'm here to help you create your magnetic brand. It's my mission to help you show up confidently with a professional, irresistible online presence. If you're in this for the long game and all in on the big vision you have for your business, let's dive in. Welcome back to the Magnetic Boss Podcast. Today we are chatting branding and how to begin choosing your brand colors. This is a process that I find so many people feel overwhelmed by, and I know that in the beginning of my business, I was all over the place with this, and it's one of the reasons why I love branding so much, because this has been such a journey for me. It has been a huge learning curve. I did not go to design school. I do not have prior education, formal education around branding. And so everything that I share with you and everything that I teach, I have learned the hard way. I have made every single branding mistake out there. So when I'm sharing with you my pet peeves and the things that drive me insane when I see other people do them, I want you to know that I've made those mistakes and learned from them, and I want you to be able to learn from them too. I really want to be able to save you time, save you energy, and help you create that magnetic brand and business straight out of the gate, right from the get-go. And also allow yourself to know that there is room for evolution. There is room for you to grow in your branding. So with that being said, on today's episode, what I want to talk about specifically when it comes to your brand is your visual brand and the color palette that you have chosen for your brand. I'm also thinking that we should play a little game in this episode, because 2 minutes into this episode, I have said brand so many times. So if you are listening, go ahead and tag me on Instagram and let me know your guess as to how many times I say the word brand in this episode. If you get it right, I'm going to have my VA go in and count the number of times I say the word. If you get it right, you're going to get a special gift from me. Okay, let's play a little game. Let's make this fun. Okay, so when we're talking about your colors, it can be overwhelming, right? There are so many options. Think about, for example, my brand color, purple. Well, purple is great, but there are so many different shades of purple. There is a bright royal purple, there's the soft lavender purple, and literally every other shade in between that. And I want to use my brand as a case study here to show you some of this evolution, and also to give you some context around choosing your colors and choosing them wisely and intentionally so that you are representing your business in a way that makes sense for your audience. Because at the end of the day, that is what we're here to do. We are not here to decorate our bedrooms and make them look beautiful, right? Save your personal preferences for your office space, but also be keeping in mind that, as I always say, your brand is a reflection of you. In order for you to stand out and to be able to do this in a way that is authentic and sustainable, you want your visual brand to be a representation of how you want your audience to feel, and also how your brand makes you feel. So with purple, for example, I started my business in the health coaching industry. I joined an MLM. I dove headfirst into the world of health coaching. And through that, I created a visual brand that was including lavender purple, this very soft, very feminine, very light purple, and a sage green. I think was around the tone of that green. If you go way, way back on Facebook and Instagram, you can see the progression of my branding. I invite you to do that because you're going to get a good laugh. So when I chose these brand colors, I was not aware of the way that that was making my audience feel. I was not aware of how they were really perceiving my business. Because when you think about lavender purple and you think about this light sage green, these colors are very soft, they're very feminine, and they do not necessarily lead to recognizing the leadership aspect of a business. And I don't want you to go out and be really concerned about your color palette. If you have an existing color palette and it is working for you in your business, please don't burn it to the ground because of what I say. Take everything with a grain of salt. Every business is different. But for me, the way that I was showing up in correlation with my brand colors, so when you took the messaging, when you looked at the way that I was speaking on video, when you looked at the offers that I was sharing, and you combined that with the colors that I was using, these very soft feminine colors, my audience did not trust me. I know, that's pretty mind-blowing to think about. But the reason for that was because I wasn't confident in who I was yet. I was very new into entrepreneurship. I was hiding behind a network marketing product, and I didn't necessarily know who I was. I had just had my firstborn, and I was so confused around my identity and how I was showing up in the world, because for the first time ever, it felt like I had a blank slate. It felt like I was able to create this story for myself and create this life for myself. So going back to these colors, if you look at the progression over time, I changed the purple and I got rid of the green because I transitioned out of health coaching and green really wasn't a relevant color anymore. Now, again, I learned this the hard way. I transitioned into coaching for moms, life coaching, and business coaching around time management. And at the time I was like, oh yeah, this green works well, but I was confused. Because again, I jumped, I made this pivot, I made this evolution shift. And so in addition to being a life coach for moms, I was also now promoting essential oils and sharing those. And it got really messy and really confusing very, very fast because somebody would land on my profile or at the time my website, which, oh boy, that's a whole other topic for a whole other episode. They would land on my content and be confused as to what I was doing because there was a little bit of this natural element and this soft femininity. There was not a whole lot of leadership. There was not a whole lot of clarity, both in my branding from a visual standpoint and from my business model as a whole. I had no idea what I was doing. And the way that I was presenting myself visually led to confusion for my audience. Now, when I dropped the green and changed the purple, I went straight into the other direction, right? It was like a complete makeover from the ground up. I got rid of everything and I went to this very bold, very vibrant, very royal purple. Now I want you to think of like the hottest hot pink out there. That was the equivalent of the purple that I was using. It stopped the scroll, that's for sure. But it was a little too electric, right? So I went in the polar opposite direction because I had decided that I wanted to work with a person who was not like everybody else, right? So when you look in the online space, you see a lot of these soft feminine colors, and I was honestly so sick of it. At that time, I had really niched down to working with people that considered themselves spiritual, considered themselves creatives, and didn't necessarily feel like they fit into a box. And so I wanted to represent that in my branding. So I chose this really bold, really vibrant purple, and I paired that with black, and those were my two brand colors. I didn't have any variations there. I used black and purple, and obviously white in my backgrounds of things. And I used a lot of smoke elements and all of these visual elements that really had this edgy feel to them. Now, this was really good for a really long time. I kept this visual branding for over a year. Go me, pat on the back. I stayed consistent, right? I'm really proud of myself because I have shifted so many times. So I stayed consistent with this for over a year. And then I recognized that I needed to find a more common ground. I was speaking, again, to a slightly different audience. So at that point, I took this same color, right? We're talking about the same color here. We're talking about purple. I took the purple that was first a very soft lavender color and then became this very bold, vibrant, in-your-face electric purple. And I found a middle ground. In 2020, I found a color palette, created a color palette for this purple that I was using that really embodied all elements of my brand and of my personality and the way that people are going to feel when they work with me. So you're noticing here that in this episode, I keep bringing up these feelings. I talk about this every single time I talk about branding. If you are not clear on how you want to make people feel, this branding process is going to be difficult. It is going to be confusing and you're going to change your mind 1,000,001 times. I know because I've done it. You just heard the whole story. I started out using these soft colors, not really understanding what they were doing in my business. I then changed that color palette in a totally opposite direction and still did not really understand what it was doing until I looked back in hindsight. So I want to save you this time and effort. I want you to first ask yourself, before you go choosing a color palette, before you go on Pinterest, I know everybody does this and I encourage it, but I want you to take this first step. Before you do anything else, I want you to allow yourself to sit with the idea and the concept of feeling, your brand creating a feeling, right? So when you think about the people that you work with, whether you have clients and customers currently, or you are in the process of building this knowledge, I want you to be thinking about the transformation that you provide. How do those people feel after they have worked with you? How do you want them to feel after they've worked with you or when they first come across your brand in the first place, right? Really get clear on this. Now, this is where color psychology does come into play. I have talked about this on the podcast before. I am not an expert in color psychology, but I have some common knowledge that you can also find and discover for yourself. So go to Google right now. If you're like, what is color psychology? How does this work? And how do I know what my brand colors represent? Go to Google, choose your brand color that you're currently using or that you want to use. I know you probably have some ideas in your head, and type in that color and then write color psychology after it and hit search. Okay? It's going to tell you what the feelings are that are created from that color. This is really good knowledge to have when you are in the process of creating your brand. What I don't want you to do is to spend too much time on this. So go search the color psychology of the color that you are considering or colors that you're considering, and then look at the psychology behind it. How is that going to make people feel? What does that color typically represent? Think about other businesses in your industry and what colors they are using, and really allow yourself to study this. Allow yourself to get curious around this. When you think about, let's just say, for example, any brand or company out there that you know that has a green color palette that is in the health and wellness industry, whether it's food related, whether they are selling a skincare product, a supplement, whatever it might be. Think about their brand colors. You're almost always going to see green, right? You're going to see some sort of variation of green. The reason for that is because green is a natural color, right? You look at the trees, they're green. You look at the grass, it's green. And so it is only going to make common sense, right? It's only just knowledge that we have both on a conscious and subconscious level that green means nature. It means calm. It allows you to feel more connected. So these businesses that are using green in their color palettes more than likely have that awareness. So be thinking about in your industry, whatever it is that you do, what are some of those common colors? That might be a good starting point for you, right? So 2 things that we've covered so far, and I want to get into the more personal aspect of your brand color selection process. The first thing is to identify how you want your brand to make people feel. What is that feeling that you want to create when people land on your website, your social media content, whatever it is? And then also understand the color psychology. So that's kind of a two-part step to this process. And then think about what your industry standard is when it comes to colors. Is there one? If there isn't, then that's totally fine. But if you are somebody who is in a health and wellness industry, for example, then chances are one of the colors in your color palette is going to be some green, some sort of green, whether it's a light green, a dark green, a soft green, a bold green, it does not matter, right? This is where we're going to talk about the personalization piece. And so really identify what fits in well with the work that you're doing, the type of work that you're doing in your business. Okay, I hope you're taking notes for this episode. If this is helpful, let me know what your biggest takeaways are. I'd love for you to share this episode out with a friend, somebody that you know that will benefit from this. And also, don't forget, we're playing a game. So every time I say the word brand, take note, because if you guess how many times I say brand in this episode, and you send me a DM on Instagram or you email me, contact@KalandraMartin, I'm going to give you a gift. Okay, so part 2 of this episode is going to be really identifying what colors are going to represent you in your brand. Now, the reason that I started with more of the market research is because that stuff is the easy part, right? That is the thing where we can go to Google, we can do some searches, and we can figure out a general idea of what our brand colors could be. But this piece, when it comes to personal branding and allowing your characteristics, your personality, all of these things that make you you to be represented in your brand, then it becomes a little bit more tricky, right? People get stuck at this point. So I want you to just take a big breath here, okay? This does not have to be difficult. It doesn't have to be confusing. It gets to be really simple. And also, it gets to evolve with you, just like every aspect of your brand. Just because you're choosing your brand colors does not mean that you're not going to change them at some point. In fact, if you don't, then that probably means that you're stagnant in your business. So the very first thing to be thinking about here is the colors that make you feel a certain way. And the reason that I phrase this way is because I don't want to simply ask you, what is your favorite color? Because quite honestly, when I started my business and I recognized that I needed to have brand colors, I was scared shitless because I don't have, up until the last couple of years, I did not have a favorite color. I've always been asked this question, right? It's one of those questions that I don't know why. I don't know why we ask this, but we always ask people, what's your favorite color, right? I remember in middle school, that was always a big question. No idea why to this day. And so I would always be asked this question, what's your favorite color? And my response would always be, well, it kind of depends on how I'm feeling that day, right? Because I could not choose one. I love all of the colors. I know that all of these colors represent different things. And so every single day, my favorite color would change. There was no go-to choice, right? And interestingly enough, in my wardrobe, which is one piece that we're going to talk about today, I always wear the color black, literally every day. If I'm not wearing black, I'm wearing white or I'm wearing gray. I only wear these neutral colors. I do not wear purple. Well, I wear purple now. That's a correction. But I never wear a red shirt or a yellow shirt or a green shirt or a blue shirt. That's not part of who I am. And so finding my quote unquote favorite color to represent my brand felt absolutely impossible in the beginning. So instead of asking you what your favorite color is, I'm going to ask you what colors compel you to feel a certain way. And you can really be looking at this in addition to the market research for your audience, right? You want your audience to feel a certain way. So you're going to choose colors based on those feelings that you're trying to elicit in your audience. You also want to be thinking about that when it comes to your own personal preferences and the ways that you want to feel. So again, going back to my purple example, which is my favorite color now, so funny. I really feel in alignment with purple for a few reasons. The first one is that it is a feminine color, but it is not your standard feminine color, right? We see this pink feminine brand plastered all over Instagram, especially back in like 2017, 2018. The pink with the gold foil was like the brand to have. And when I see those brands, I think that they're pretty, I think that they're beautiful, but it doesn't feel authentic to me, right? It feels too cookie cutter. It feels too in the box. And so for me, purple feels like this color that is a little bit rebellious. It is a little bit unorthodox, if you will. And I have also found, interestingly enough, that almost every single client that I work with is drawn to purple. And I'm not sure exactly how this all correlates and why that happens, but I have a hunch that purple people are purple people. If you're a purple person, you know what I'm saying, right? When you love the color purple, you just are drawn to it no matter where you go or what you do or what the context is. So when I chose purple, I recognized that I chose it very intentionally because it was basically the opposite of pink, and I didn't want a pink brand. It also is a color that represents creativity. And when you think about color psychology, this is important to be considering, right? So for me, I have a very creative business. I am somebody who has always been creative, even when I didn't label myself as a quote-unquote artist or as somebody that was creative. Growing up, I was always doing arts and crafts. I was really into making things and using my hands and having all of these projects. And so it makes sense now, in hindsight, looking back, that purple would be a perfect color for me because it does represent creativity. And lastly, one of the other reasons that purple is my personal color, right, my personal brand color, is because it represents luxury and royalty. And that was hard to say. But purple is one of those colors that just has this luxurious feel. It feels very rich and, well, luxurious. So I have personal reasons for using the color purple in my brand, but again, I did not have a quote-unquote favorite color. I grew into my brand colors the more that I began to use them, the more consistently I began to use them. And what's really important here is to recognize that just because you choose something for your brand does not automatically mean that everything in your life has to be that color, right? So I want you to be thinking about, I'm going to give you a couple of prompts to get your ideas and your creative juices flowing here so that you can be thinking about your brand colors as somebody who is perceiving you from the outside in, right? Because we have this internal idea of ourselves in our head. We're always in our minds. And I want you to start getting that external reflection. So the first thing that I want you to do when it comes to your personal brand colors is to look around your typical surroundings. This could be your home, this could be your office space, this could be looking at your wardrobe, you could be looking at your car, although my car is a horrible representation of my brand, although maybe it's a perfect representation, to be determined. My car is a mess all of the time. That's just how I am. I'm disorganized in my personal life and organized in my business life. But be looking at the spaces that make you feel inspired, the spaces that feel like home to you, the spaces that feel comforting for you, and start to notice patterns. This doesn't necessarily mean that everything is the same color, but start to notice patterns. What colors are your curtains on your windows? What color throw pillows do you typically go for? What is your favorite color to wear, right? It might not be your favorite color, but your favorite color to wear. What makes you feel good in your own skin? I know for me, it's black, right? So it makes sense that I wear black, and there's a lot of black involved in my visual brand. So be paying attention to those patterns, be looking for those patterns, because without you even knowing, my guess is that when you're going through the home goods aisle in Target or TJ Maxx or wherever you shop, you're going to be reaching for a lot of the same types of things. It is why I always ask my clients, when we are going through the process of choosing their brand colors, what colors do they make them feel really comfortable in their day-to-day life, right? So be looking at those things. The other thing that you can be thinking about is how you aspire to represent yourself. Now, the reason that I say this is because sometimes the person that we are currently does not reflect the person that we aspire to be. And the reason for that is because we are always a current reflection of who we were, right? So the inner work that you've done, the mindset work that you've done, the experiences that you've had, the people that you surround yourself with, the ways that you walk through this earth are going to be represented in your current state. So if you are aspiring to reach a new level, to grow as a person, and you haven't gotten there yet, allow yourself to think big picture. Think big vision. Because if you brand yourself now as who you are now versus who you aspire to be, then you're going to find yourself needing to evolve in your visual brand a lot faster, right? There are going to be these next levels, these next steps that you're going to take. So this is a process that I went through in 2020 when I did my rebrand, my visual rebrand, because I had to ask myself, where am I going? Right? What am I doing in my business? Where is this thing going? And when I got that clarity around that, and I understood the type of person that I was calling into my business and created a visual representation of how I want those people to feel, all of the uncertainty and lack of clarity went out the window. And then I was able to see what I was striving for. So I want you to allow yourself to be expansive in your visual brand. If you don't necessarily feel right now like a six-figure entrepreneur, a badass boss who is making waves in your industry, then start to look at and gain inspiration from the opportunities that are in front of you, the possibilities that are in front of you. So this might look like finding and researching other people in like-minded industries and seeing how they represent themselves, seeing the types of branding that they have, and allowing yourself to put your own spin on that. So this is where Pinterest comes into play. Okay, I'm giving you permission now that you've done some of this work, to go over to Pinterest and look for the types of brands that you aspire to have, right? The types of feelings that you hope to evoke in your audience and in your life, right? You want people to feel your energy when you walk into a room. And the same thing goes for your online presence. You want people to feel you. And in order for that to happen, you have to step up your game. You have to really recognize not where you are right now, but where you are going. So have fun with this process. I'm going to wrap this up because this is becoming a lengthy episode. I could talk about this literally all day long, but I want you to take these initial steps. Whether you currently have a brand and you need to rebrand, you want to update some things, or you are starting from the ground up and you are ready to build your online presence and really allow people to see and feel your business, go through these steps. Do your market research. Take a look from the inside out at how your brand is perceived, but how you are perceived, how you make people feel, and how you desire to make people feel. And have some fun with this. Really, honestly, this is not something that has to feel like homework, right? This is something that you get to allow yourself to be creative with. You get to have fun with, and you always get to change. You always get to evolve. So I hope that this episode was helpful. If it was, take a screenshot, tag me on Instagram, share this episode out. If you're really loving the content here on the podcast, I would so appreciate if you would leave a rating and review on iTunes. That really helps us grow the show. And make sure that you are participating in this fun little pop-up giveaway. So if you have a guess as to how many times I said brand in this episode, send me a DM on Instagram or email me contact@CalandraMartin with your guess, and the person who guesses the closest will get some sort of surprise from me, okay? And I will see you on the next episode. Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe wherever you are listening so you never miss a beat. For episode show notes, visit calandramartin.com/podcast. Your iTunes reviews and your sharing of the show helps us reach more magnetic bosses just like you. Until next time.